The view from the spaceport on the Graxian homeworld was breathtaking. For Captain Ethan Ward, however, it was nothing more than a reminder of the challenge ahead. Earth, a young, thriving world on the edge of galactic space, had been petitioning for years to join the Galactic Council. But so far, every attempt had been met with rejection, sneers, or indifference from the galaxy's elite species. The Council had always been a tightly knit group, and for the humans of Earth, the doors had been closed. But now, for the first time, Earth was on the verge of something more. The Graxian Empire, strong, ancient, and proud, was the key to opening that door. If only Ethan could convince the Graxians, maybe he could push through the final hurdle to Earth's acceptance. As Ethan stepped off his transport ship, the bustling city of Graxian Prime greeted him with towering spires and neon-lit streets, a sharp contrast to the quiet, determined humility of Earth's colonies. The streets buzzed with the hum of alien voices, but Ethan's focus remained sharp. He had a mission: to represent Earth and convince the Council to let them in. But more importantly, he had to face the Graxian Empire, whose leaders were notorious for their stubbornness and pride. A diplomat's dilemma. The Council had already made it clear that Earth's technology was crude by galactic standards. The humans had fast-tracked their space program, relying heavily on scavenged technology from ancient alien ships, and their propulsion systems were seen as inefficient compared to the sophisticated drives of other species. Worse, humanity's political systems were fractured, and many Council species viewed Earth's long history of war and division as a sign of weakness. Ethan had spent years in the military, but now, as a diplomat, he would have to navigate the intricate web of galactic politics. Gone were the days of simple tactics and direct combat. Now, it was all about persuasion, strategy, and sometimes playing the long game. He had just received the official briefing from Grand Counselor Nivak, an imposing figure with a demeanor colder than the void between the stars. The Graxians are a practical species, Nivak had told him before the mission. They don't care about sentiment or potential. They care about power, and they won't allow Earth to join unless you prove you can match them. We don't expect much, but perhaps, just perhaps, you can surprise them. Ethan's fingers tightened around the data pad in his hand. The Council expected little from humanity. It was a belief that burned in him deep within his chest. The Graxian Empire. The Graxians were a species of warriors, known for their ruthlessness and strategic brilliance. Their culture had been shaped by millennia of conquest, their society structured around power and respect. They held the strongest military in the galaxy, and it was their influence that shaped the Galactic Council's decisions. If Earth had any hope of entering the Council, it had to be through them. Ethan knew the odds were stacked against him. The Graxians had already made it clear that humanity was not ready. The request for Earth's entry had been denied by their ambassadors time and time again. Still, he had a glimmer of hope, one small piece of leverage: humanity's ingenuity. The Graxians believed that all technology had its limits, that innovation could only go so far. Ethan had seen it firsthand in the military. Humans could adapt in ways other species couldn't. Earth had no advanced hyperdrives, no powerful weapons. But Earth had the one thing no one could predict: humanity's ability to improvise, to fight against the odds, to create when no one else could. An unlikely ally. Ethan stood at the entrance of the Graxian Assembly Hall, surrounded by alien delegates who eyed him with a mixture of curiosity and disdain. His sharp military uniform seemed out of place among the colorful, flowing robes of the dignitaries. Yet, despite the icy reception, there was something in the air, something he couldn't quite name, that felt like an opportunity. He was about to meet Zellara, a high-ranking Graxian officer and scientist. Unknown to the rest of the Council, Zellara had been quietly questioning the traditional Graxian doctrine. As a scientist, she was fascinated by Earth's ingenuity, and as a soldier, she admired humanity's resilience. Though the Graxians had rejected Earth, Zellara had secretly shared her concerns with the human delegation. "Are you ready for this, Captain?" Lieutenant Renat, one of Ethan's trusted aides, asked, her voice low and tense. Ethan nodded, feeling a strange sense of resolve settle over him. "We don't have any other choice, Lieutenant. Earth's future depends on us." He strode forward with determination, his eyes scanning the alien faces before him. Despite the uncertainty, despite the threat of rejection, Ethan knew this mission could be the turning point for humanity. The challenge. Zellara greeted him in a quiet, formal manner, but there was a flicker of something else in her eyes, a sense of urgency, perhaps, or fear. As they moved through the grand chamber, passing columns that seemed to stretch up into eternity, Zellera's voice softened. The Graxian Empire is not like the others in the Council. They care for power above all else, and they see Earth as a threat. I've heard, Ethan replied, glancing at her. What can we do about it? Zellera paused, her mandibles clicking in thought. The Graxians will never openly admit it, but they fear humanity. Your species is unpredictable, and in the right hands, that could be powerful. But it's not enough to show them your strengths. You'll have to make them believe in humanity's potential to lead, to innovate. They entered the main hall, where representatives from various species watched them silently. Ethan felt the weight of their gaze, the cold, calculating stares that judged every step he took. He had no illusions about the task ahead. Then, just as the doors to the council chamber opened, a sudden voice echoed through the hall, sharp and challenging. Humanity has no place here. It was Ambassador Dracus, the Graxian representative, arrogant, prideful, and fiercely opposed to Earth's entry. His harsh words sent a ripple through the room, and Ethan felt the tension rise. Zellera turned to him, her voice low. This will be harder than you think, Captain. The Graxians may not see it now, but they'll have no choice but to respect what Earth can do. You just need to make them believe it. Cliffhanger. As the council meeting began, with the first round of speeches already underway, Ethan felt a sharp pang of uncertainty. Could humanity truly convince the Graxian Empire to allow them in? Or were they doomed to be forever seen as nothing more than a lesser species? As the debate raged, the last words from Ambassador Dracus echoed in his mind. Humanity has no place here. And then, just as Ethan began to speak, a sudden alarm blared across the room. The lights flickered, and an urgent transmission echoed through the chamber. Incoming message from the Outer Rim, unknown fleet detected. It's the Graxian Empire. They've launched a surprise attack on Earth. Chaos in the chamber. The sudden alarm that reverberated through the council hall made the hairs on the back of Ethan's neck stand on end. The soft murmur of delegates was replaced by the mechanical whir of communication systems, and the once bustling chamber now stood frozen in stunned silence. Incoming message from the Outer Rim, unknown fleet detected. It's the Graxian Empire. They've launched a surprise attack on Earth. The words hung in the air like a death sentence. Ethan's mind raced as he quickly processed the implications of the message. The Graxian Empire, the same species that had made so many efforts to dismiss Earth's petition, had just launched an attack on the very planet they had claimed to protect. Why? And more importantly, how could they be so brazen? The Grand Counselor, Nivak, slammed his gavel, his voice booming through the now tense room. This is an emergency. All delegations are to remain in their assigned positions. No one is to leave until we have more information. Ethan glanced over at Zellera, who had gone pale under her normally composed exterior. Her mandibles clicked nervously, betraying the turmoil beneath her calm facade. She stepped closer to Ethan, her voice a whisper. We have to move quickly, Captain. I fear this is not an isolated attack. This is something much worse. Ethan raised an eyebrow. What are you talking about? Zellera looked around, ensuring no one was listening before leaning in. The Graxian Empire has been preparing for war for decades. Earth is not just a target. It's a pawn in a much larger game. They're using humanity's resource wealth, but they are also planning to exploit Earth as a testing ground for a new weapon, a weapon that could decimate entire star systems. Ethan's heart skipped a beat. A weapon. The hidden truth. Zellera led Ethan to a secluded corner of the chamber, away from prying eyes. The air was thick with the tension of the council members, all eagerly awaiting the next update. Outside, the universe was unraveling. The Exodus Protocol, Zellera muttered, her voice laced with bitterness. It's a secret military project, one designed to use Earth's resources to build a devastating weapon. They've been experimenting with it in the Outer Rim. If Earth's wealth and resources fall into the wrong hands, the entire council could be plunged into chaos. Ethan's mind whirled. The implications of what Zellera was saying were staggering. He had always suspected that the Graxian Empire's disdain for humanity was rooted in something deeper than simple prejudice. But this was beyond anything he could have imagined. Why aren't they telling the council? Ethan asked. Why keep this a secret? Zellera's eyes hardened. Because the Graxians fear the council's response. If the Council knew the true extent of the Exodus Protocol, they'd be forced to act. And the Graxians are not prepared for the fallout. So they're making Earth their scapegoat. They want to keep humanity down, but they also want to use Earth to solidify their power. Ethan swallowed, the weight of the situation settling on him like a stone. The Graxians had manipulated the Council for centuries. Earth was not just a potential ally, it was a bargaining chip, one that would be crushed if the Graxians had their way. If they succeed, Zelera continued, Earth will be sacrificed and the Graxians will rise as the undisputed power of the galaxy. The Council's technological stagnation will leave them powerless to stop it. Ethan's resolve hardened. We can't let that happen. The plan begins. With the Council in disarray, Ethan and Zelera knew they had no time to waste. They needed to expose the Graxian conspiracy to the galaxy, but doing so would not be easy. The Council was as much a part of the problem as the Graxians themselves. Ethan couldn't rely on them to act in time, but he did have something the Graxians didn't expect, an ally within the Empire. We need to contact General Corrin, Zelera said, her voice now resolute. He's a high-ranking officer in the Graxian military, and he's been quietly trying to stop the Exodus Protocol. If we can get to him, he can help us expose the Graxian plot to the rest of the galaxy. Ethan nodded. He had no illusions about the dangers of such a mission. If the Graxian Empire discovered their plan, they would be executed on the spot. But there was no other choice. The hidden rebel. Zelera led Ethan through the labyrinthine corridors of Graxian Prime, away from the prying eyes of the Council delegates. Their destination was a hidden rebel base within the heart of the Graxian capital. Here, General Corrin and his followers had been secretly working against the Empire's expansionist agenda. The base was stark, hidden beneath the city's surface, where only those loyal to the rebellion were permitted entry. It was a stark contrast to the opulent halls above, a place where Graxians who rejected their Empire's violent agenda could hide in plain sight. Zelera's presence here was a clear indication of her betrayal of the Empire's rule. Corrin was a tall Graxian with a battle-scarred face and the grim demeanor of a seasoned commander. He studied Ethan for a long moment before speaking, his voice low and deliberate. You've come to us at a critical time, Captain. The Graxians are already mobilizing. Earth has no idea what's coming for them. Ethan held his ground, unflinching. We need your help, General. The Graxian attack has already begun. If we don't act now, Earth is doomed. I need your support to stop the Exodus Protocol. Corrin nodded slowly. I've been tracking the Empire's movements for years. I knew this day would come, but I had hoped I was wrong. I'll help you, Captain, but be warned, once we act, there's no turning back. As the room fell silent, a faint, buzzing sound echoed from the communications panel. Corrin's eyes widened in alarm as he quickly moved to the console. The transmission was direct and unencrypted. It was a Graxian military message, intercepted. Ethan leaned in, his heart racing as Corrin played the message. General Corrin, it's time. The Empire has made its decision. The Exodus Protocol is in motion. Prepare the fleet for immediate deployment. Earth will be the first to fall. The message ended with a sharp click. Ethan's pulse quickened. The attack wasn't just happening, it was escalating. The Graxian Empire had launched its full assault on Earth, and there was no turning back. Betrayal in the stars. The transmission from General Corrin had been a grim confirmation. The Graxian Empire was moving forward with the Exodus Protocol, and Earth was now its primary target. The countdown had already begun. General Corrin's face was taut with resolve as he turned to Ethan and Zelera. The Empire's fleet is already mobilizing. Earth won't have time to prepare. The Graxians are moving fast, faster than we anticipated. Ethan's mind raced. He'd known that time was short, but hearing the confirmation of the attack's scale, the sheer devastation that could follow, was almost too much to bear. Earth's defense forces were nowhere near ready for this kind of onslaught. The technology and resources humanity had gathered over the years were no match for the might of the Graxian war machine. But Earth had something the Graxians didn't count on, humanity's ingenuity, and Ethan wasn't about to let that go to waste. We need to warn Earth, Ethan said, his voice firm. We need to act now before the fleet arrives. Zelera nodded, her mandibles clicking with agitation. The Graxians are expecting Earth to fall easily. They won't be prepared for the kind of resistance you can put up. But you need to act fast. The Empire's fleet is too strong to let them have time to regroup. Ethan turned to General Corrin, who was already analyzing the situation. We need to get to Earth, warn them, and stop the Exodus protocol from being activated. Can you get us a ship? Something fast. Corrin's expression was grave, but his eyes glinted with a trace of defiance. I can get you to Earth, but it won't be easy. The Graxians have already established a blockade around your planet. You'll need to slip through unnoticed, which won't be easy. You'll need help. Zellara spoke up, her voice low and steady. I can help you bypass their defense systems. I know the Graxian military protocols. I've worked on their systems for years. If there's a way through, I'll find it. Ethan nodded, his trust in her growing by the second. Then let's move quickly. Every minute we waste brings Earth closer to destruction. The long journey. The ship they boarded was a stealth vessel, a relic from an earlier Graxian rebellion. It was small, fast, and equipped with just enough technology to slip past the Graxian blockade without detection. Zellara had made sure it was ready, using her insider knowledge to repurpose the ship's stealth technology and modify its communications array. As they prepared for takeoff, Ethan's mind kept drifting back to Earth. He had been to the colonies, seen the peaceful hustle of everyday life. To think that all of that could be wiped out in a matter of hours was a bitter pill to swallow. He clenched his fists, swearing to himself that he would not let the Graxian Empire destroy everything Earth had built. The ship lurched forward, breaking through the atmosphere of Graxian Prime. The stars outside the viewport glittered like a sea of diamonds, but to Ethan they felt cold, distant. The journey ahead was filled with uncertainty, but he had no choice. The stakes had never been higher. The approach to Earth. As they neared Earth's solar system, Zellara sat at the control console, her fingers moving rapidly across the holographic interface. We'll have to bypass their primary defense grid, she said, her voice steady despite the tension in the air. If we do it right, we can slip in unnoticed. Ethan peered out the viewport as the familiar sight of Earth's blue and white sphere came into view. The planet that had once seemed so distant, so unimportant to the rest of the galaxy, now felt like home. He could see the shadows of the Graxian fleet beginning to form around the planet, their massive warships positioned in strategic formations, ready to strike. They're already here, Ethan muttered under his breath. The weight of the moment hit him all at once. Earth had never faced an enemy like this before, but neither had the Graxians faced humanity, will to survive. Zellara turned to him, her expression serious. This will be close. We'll have to move fast and make sure they don't detect us. One wrong move and the entire fleet will know we're here. Ethan nodded. The fate of Earth rested on their shoulders. He wasn't about to let fear take over. They had one shot at this. Breaking through the blockade. As the stealth vessel neared Earth's orbit, the ship's systems beeped with warnings. Graxian ships patrolled the area, their sensors scanning the space around them for any signs of intrusion. Zellara's fingers danced across the controls, activating the ship's cloaking system and rerouting the power through the ship's secondary engines. The ship shuddered as the sensors flared briefly, but the cloaking technology held, and the ship remained undetected. Ethan could hear the soft hum of the engines in the background, a rhythmic reminder that time was ticking away. Zellara's voice broke the silence. We're almost through, one last jump and we'll be in Earth's atmosphere. But just as she spoke, an alert flashed across the console. A Graxian destroyer had shifted its patrol pattern and was now heading directly toward them. Ethan's heart raced. Zellara, can we avoid them? Zellara's eyes widened as she quickly recalculated their trajectory. We don't have time. If we don't move now, we'll be detected. Prepare for evasive maneuvers. The ship jolted as Zellara activated the ship's thrusters, sending them into a sharp dive toward Earth's atmosphere. The massive Graxian destroyer loomed in the distance, its guns ready to fire. The odds were stacking against them, but Ethan had no choice. The risk was too great to turn back. As the ship barreled toward Earth, the Graxian destroyer came into full view, its enormous guns beginning to charge. A high-pitched alarm blared throughout the ship, signaling imminent danger. Ethan gripped the nearest console, his knuckles white. Zellara, can we make it? Zellara's voice was tight with tension. If we can dodge its sensors long enough, yes, but we need to be fast. We need to get to the surface and warn Earth before the Graxian fleet fires. The ship rocketed downward, dodging laser fire from the Graxian destroyer. A single blast scraped the ship's hull, sending sparks flying across the cockpit. The ship shuddered violently, but they were still alive. "Brace yourselves," Zalara shouted. Just as the destroyer's guns fired once more, a bright flash of light enveloped the ship, and everything went dark. Everything went dark. Ethan's vision returned in fragments, the hum of the ship's system shutting down, the smell of burnt circuitry, the violent jolt of the ship's hull scraping against something hard. His body slammed against the safety harness as the ship hurtled toward Earth's surface, the warning alarm still blaring in his ears. Impact. The world around him seemed to explode in a burst of sound and motion. The ship's control panel cracked open with a loud pop, spilling smoke and sparks into the already chaotic cockpit. Zalara's calm voice cut through the noise, sharp and urgent. "We're crashing, hold on." Before he could react, the ship hit the ground, skidding violently across a rough terrain. Dust and debris flew everywhere as the ship finally came to a shuddering halt, its systems failing one by one. Ethan's head slammed against the dashboard, the world spinning around him as he struggled to stay conscious. Regaining control. The first thing Ethan felt when he came to was the sharp pain in his head, the bitter metallic taste in his mouth. The alarms had stopped, replaced by the heavy, oppressive silence of the wreckage. Zalara was already moving, her alien agility allowing her to unbuckle herself and check the ship's systems. Her mandibles clicked in frustration as she assessed their situation. "We're alive," she said, her voice clipped. "But the ship's wrecked. We've lost all communications. The Exodus protocol will be fully underway soon. We don't have much time." Ethan wiped the blood from his face, forcing himself into a sitting position despite the dizziness. "Where are we?" Zalara glanced out the cracked viewport. "Near a human military base. We've entered Earth's atmosphere near the outskirts of a civilian zone. If we're lucky, we'll blend in long enough to find some help. If we're not." Her voice trailed off as the sound of distant explosions filled the air. Ethan didn't need to ask what they were. The Graxian fleet was already beginning its assault. "We need to move," Ethan said, gritting his teeth. "Now." The human response. The ship had crashed just outside a military facility in the American Southwest. Despite the damage, the ship's cloaking mechanism had held long enough for them to avoid detection. But that wouldn't last forever. Zalara worked quickly to unlock the emergency hatch. The acrid smell of burnt fuel hung in the air as they stepped out into the harsh sunlight. Earth was already under siege, and the distant rumble of explosions echoed across the desert landscape. Ethan's eyes narrowed as he scanned the horizon. The Earth military base was visible in the distance, just beyond a series of rocky outcrops. But the closer they got, the clearer it became that the Graxian fleet had already started its assault on human infrastructure. The base was in full lockdown, its perimeter defenses already being activated as sirens blared. "They'll need help," Ethan said, his voice grim, "and we don't have time to waste." Zalara turned to him. "You know this base." Ethan nodded. "It's a forward command center. If we can get there, we might be able to rally some support. We'll need to convince them Earth isn't as defenseless as the Graxians think." A moment of humanity. As they neared the base, they encountered their first resistance. A group of soldiers, armed and on high alert, stepped forward, weapons raised. Their faces were hardened, and they seemed to be under the belief that anyone approaching in the midst of an attack had to be a threat. "Stop," one of the soldiers barked. "Who are you and what's your business here?" Ethan raised his hands, trying to appear as non-threatening as possible. "I'm Captain Ethan Ward, part of Earth's diplomatic mission to the Galactic Council. My ship was shot down. We need help urgently." The soldiers exchanged wary glances. One of them, a young woman with sharp eyes and a tense posture, stepped forward. "A diplomat? How do we know you're not a Graxian spy?" Zalara tensed, but Ethan raised a hand to calm her. "You don't have to trust me, but you do have to trust what's happening out there," he said, gesturing toward the distant explosions. "The Graxians aren't just here to invade, they're testing something. We need to stop them, and we need all the help we can get." The soldiers were silent for a moment, clearly processing the information. Finally, the young woman nodded. "Follow me. We'll take you to the command center, but if you're lying, don't expect any mercy." Ethan exhaled, relief momentarily washing over him. They had a foot in the door, and that was all they needed. The human solution, engineering the future. Inside the command center, the situation was even more dire than Ethan had anticipated. The walls were lined with screens showing various parts of Earth's military infrastructure, all of which were under heavy assault by Graxian forces. As military personnel scrambled to coordinate a response, Ethan was escorted to a large briefing room where the base's commander, General Ana Lopez, was organizing the defense efforts. Lopez was a striking woman, her face stern but resolute. She wasted no time with pleasantries. "So you're the one who's supposed to save us from the Graxians. You better have a plan, Captain." Ethan didn't flinch at her bluntness. He had learned long ago that soldiers didn't waste time on formalities when the stakes were high. "We do have a plan," he said, meeting her eyes. "And I have something you need, knowledge of Graxian technology. With it, we can turn the tide of this war." He went on to explain how the Graxians were planning to deploy the Exodus Protocol, a weapon capable of destroying entire planets. He shared the data he'd gathered from Zellara and Korin, outlining the weapon's capabilities and its devastating impact on Earth. "We've got the technology to fight back," Ethan continued. "But we need to work fast. The Graxians don't want to just conquer Earth, they want to wipe it out. We can stop them, but we'll need your best engineers, your most skilled strategists, and your trust." General Lopez paused, clearly processing the weight of Ethan's words. "All right, Captain, you've got my attention. But if we're going to do this, we're going to need to combine our resources, the best of Earth and the best of whatever you're hiding from us." Just as Ethan thought they were gaining ground, a transmission crackled through the room's communication system. The message was brief, but it sent a chill down Ethan's spine. "We have detected an incoming Graxian warship. It's larger than anything we've seen. We don't have the firepower to stop it." General Lopez's face hardened. "Then it's time we get creative." As the room fell into chaos, Ethan exchanged a look with Zellara. They both knew that the fight was about to take an even darker turn. The Graxians had come prepared for war, but humanity had something they didn't expect. And they were about to show them just how powerful human ingenuity could be. Tensions rise. The atmosphere in the command center was thick with urgency. General Lopez had assembled the best engineers and tactical minds Earth had to offer, and they were all huddled around a holographic display of the incoming Graxian warship. The ship was massive, far larger than any Graxian vessel they had encountered before. "They're not just here to conquer," Lopez muttered, studying the display. "They're bringing everything they've got." Ethan's heart pounded in his chest. He knew that the Graxians weren't just testing a weapon, they were making a statement. The Exodus Protocol was their final solution. Earth wasn't just a conquest, it was the beginning of a new order with the Graxians at the helm. Zellara, who had been quietly working with the engineers, suddenly turned to Ethan. Her expression was grave. "Captain, I've analyzed the data we have on that warship. It's not just a show of force, it's a weapon, designed to destroy entire cities in a single strike." Ethan's blood ran cold. He had known the Graxians had a tendency to escalate, but this was something else. "If they fire that thing, Earth is done for." General Lopez stepped forward, her eyes focused and sharp. "What do we need to do to stop it?" Zellara glanced at the holographic map, her claws clicking with intensity. "We'll need to take out their power core. It's heavily shielded but not impenetrable. If we can disable the ship's energy systems, we might be able to stop the weapon from firing." Ethan nodded. "Then that's our plan. We need to get close enough to their flagship to plant explosives on their power core. We'll need a small team to infiltrate the ship." "Are you volunteering, Captain?" Lopez asked, her voice dry, though there was no mistaking the respect in her eyes. Ethan looked at Zellara. "It's the only way. If we can destroy their flagship, the rest of the fleet will fall apart. We've got one shot at this." A fateful betrayal. As preparations for the infiltration began, a shadow of unease settled over Ethan. It felt like they were rushing headlong into the fire, and the odds of success were shrinking by the minute. Still, there was no turning back now. Ethan and Zellara were led to a small craft capable of penetrating the Graxian warship's defenses. The vessel was stealthy, equipped with advanced cloaking technology that would allow them to slip past the Graxian fleet undetected. General Lopez had provided the coordinates to the heart of the Graxian flagship, a dark behemoth looming in the sky above them. The team of specialists was small but capable: Ethan, Zellara, and a few of Earth's best operatives. They would infiltrate the ship, plant the explosives, and make their escape before the Graxians could retaliate. As they took off, the dark void of space stretched endlessly before them. But in the pit of his stomach, Ethan couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. A part of him felt like they were being led into a trap. He was right. Halfway to the Graxian warship, as they approached the perimeter of its cloaking field, a sudden transmission interrupted their communications. "Captain Ward." The voice was familiar, too familiar. Ethan's heart skipped a beat. It was Ambassador Dracus, the Graxian representative who had so vehemently opposed Earth's entry into the Galactic Council. "You thought you could betray us, Captain?" Dracus's voice was dripping with disdain. "We have been watching you. You never had a chance." Ethan's eyes widened in horror as the truth began to dawn on him. The mission, the rebellion within the Graxian ranks, Zelara's defection, it had all been a carefully orchestrated scheme. The Exodus Protocol wasn't just about Earth's destruction. It was about drawing humanity in, giving them false hope, and then crushing them when they least expected it. Zelara's face paled as she realized the truth. "No," she whispered, her voice filled with disbelief. "You didn't." But it was too late. Before they could react, the Graxian fleet closed in on their position, surrounding them from all sides. The ship jolted violently as weapons fire from the destroyers exploded in the distance. The craft's shields barely held, flickering under the intense bombardment. Ethan's mind raced. They walked right into a trap, and now their only chance for survival was to fight their way out. The battle begins. The craft swerved and dipped, dodging Graxian fire as the enemy warships moved in to encircle them. The momentary confusion of the Graxians gave Ethan and his team a brief opening, but it wouldn't last long. "Prepare for evasive maneuvers," Ethan barked, gripping the controls as Zelara worked the ship's weapons system. "We're going to break through, but we need to move now." The craft roared to life, and Zelara fired a series of plasma blasts at the nearest destroyer. The explosions lit up the darkness of space, and for a brief moment the Graxian ship scattered, thrown off by the unexpected resistance. But the Graxians were swift to recover. The flagship launched a series of missile barrages that rocked the ship, throwing Ethan and his team into the air. The emergency alarms blared, but they had no time to waste. "We need to land," Ethan shouted, trying to hold the craft steady. "Zelara, find us an opening." Zelara's claws flew across the controls, tapping into the ship's sensors. Her eyes narrowed, calculating their options. There, on the starboard side. With a deft move, she piloted the ship toward the opening she had spotted, a gap between the massive warship's outer defenses. It was their only chance. The craft slid through the gap, just barely avoiding the incoming missiles. They were inside the belly of the beast now. The moment the ship touched down, the door to the hangar bay slammed open, and armed Graxian soldiers stormed inside. Ethan and his team immediately deployed, weapons drawn, as the doors to the warship's heart began to close in on them. "You think you can defeat the Graxian Empire?" Dracus's voice echoed through their comms, mocking them. "This is the end, Captain, for you, and for your pitiful species." Zelara stood beside Ethan, her eyes burning with determination. "Not today," she whispered, and for the first time Ethan saw the full weight of her resolve. The battle had only just begun. They were outnumbered, they were on enemy turf, but Earth's final hope had arrived, and they would not back down without a fight. Fighting through the beast. The hangar bay was a cavernous expanse of steel, dimly lit by flickering emergency lights. The walls seemed to pulse with the hum of the Graxian warship's inner workings, and the metallic scent of the air mixed with the acrid burn of plasma burns and gunpowder. Ethan's heart pounded in his chest as he steadied his weapon, eyes darting to the door ahead where the Graxian soldiers were preparing to breach. "They're coming," Zelara muttered under her breath, her mandibles clicking with sharp anticipation. "And they won't give us a chance to explain." Ethan took a deep breath, clenching his fists around the rifle. "Then we make sure they don't get the chance." The team was small, 5 operatives in total, each trained for situations like this. But it didn't matter how many of them there were. What mattered was speed and precision. They couldn't afford to waste time, especially now that Dracus had revealed his betrayal. They had one goal: disable the Graxian warship and stop the Exodus Protocol. A loud crash reverberated through the hangar as the first Graxian soldiers burst through the entrance. their hulking, insected bodies charging forward. The soldiers were equipped with advanced energy rifles, but their real strength lay in their overwhelming numbers. They would keep coming until they were all dead, or until Earth was no more. "Fire," Ethan commanded. The team opened fire. Explosions and the crack of plasma rifles filled the air as the first wave of Graxian soldiers fell. But there were more, always more. Zalara fired over Ethan's shoulder, her shots hitting the incoming soldiers with pinpoint accuracy. Her deep, reptilian eyes never wavered as she moved like a shadow, striking with lethal precision. The others followed suit, forming a tight perimeter and systematically thinning the Graxian ranks. But the Graxians were relentless, and their reinforcements were already on the way. Ethan's mind raced. They needed to finish this quickly. Every second they spent here was another second the Exodus protocol had to go live. "Zalara, how much longer?" Ethan called over the cacophony of battle. She didn't look up, but her voice was firm. "We're close. The central core should be just ahead, but we need to clear the main hallway before we can access the main terminal." The team advanced, moving through the hangar with practiced precision, neutralizing the Graxian soldiers who attempted to block their path. The tension in the air was thick, the sound of gunfire and the crackle of energy shields reverberating through the metal walls of the ship. But then a voice broke through the chaos. "Captain Ward." Ethan froze. The voice was unmistakable. It was Dracus, and he was not just speaking through their comms. He was speaking through a speaker system, amplifying his voice throughout the entire ship. "You cannot win this war. The Graxian Empire is eternal. And you are nothing but a passing anomaly. Earth will burn, and I will be the one to watch it burn." The words were like venom in Ethan's ears, but they only fueled his determination further. "Keep moving," Ethan shouted. Zalara's eyes narrowed, her anger mirrored in every soldier on the team. "He's not wrong about one thing. We're on borrowed time. We need to get to the core now." The core of the beast. The team reached the main hallway leading to the central core of the Graxian flagship. But it wasn't just the soldiers they had to worry about. The entire ship seemed to be alive, shifting and groaning under the weight of their presence. Ethan's pulse quickened as they approached the sealed door to the core terminal. "This is it," Zalara said, stepping forward to the terminal. Her claws flashed across the interface, activating the override sequence that would allow them to access the core. But just as the final sequence completed, a loud metallic thud echoed behind them. "Captain Ward," Dracus's voice came again, this time sounding more triumphant. "You've made it this far, but it's over. You've walked into my trap. The core has already been activated. You won't make it out in time to stop the blast." Ethan's stomach dropped. "No," he muttered, looking toward Zalara. "We need to get in there now." Zalara didn't hesitate. She pushed the terminal open, and the blast doors groaned as they separated. Inside, a swirling mass of Graxian technology pulsed with violent energy, the core at its center. A massive glowing sphere was suspended in midair, crackling with raw power. The Exodus protocol was far more advanced than they'd expected, a weapon capable of tapping into the very core of a planet and obliterating it in a single shot. The countdown timer was already blinking on the central monitor. 3-0-0. The impossible choice. Ethan's mind raced. They had less than 3 minutes to disable the core before the Graxians wiped Earth off the map. But the Graxian ship was massive. If they could somehow destroy the core, they might be able to disable the entire fleet, and with it, the Exodus protocol. "Zalara," Ethan barked, turning to her, "can you override the core systems? Can we stop the countdown?" Zalara's eyes darted between the core and the terminal, her expression filled with dread. "I can try, but there's no guarantee. The core's encryption is complex. I may need direct access to the primary control system." "Then let's get there," Ethan said, already moving toward the door at the other end of the room. As they approached the control system, another explosion shook the ship. The walls trembled and dust fell from the ceiling. Time was running out. They were losing precious seconds. But before they could reach the console, a sudden surge of energy erupted from the core, sending them both sprawling across the floor. Ethan's vision blurred, and the pain shot through his body like 1,000 needles. He pushed through it, gasping for air. The countdown was still ticking down, 2-0-0. Zalara was already back on her feet, moving swiftly toward the terminal. "I can't do this alone. I need your help, Captain." The countdown hit 1:30. There was no more time. They had no choice but to make the most dangerous play of all. Ethan stood next to Zelera, watching as the energy around the core intensified. "Do it, Zelera. We don't have another option." She nodded, her face grim. "It's either all or nothing now. If I fail, the Graxians win. If I succeed." Zelera's fingers danced over the control panel, and then, just as the final moments ticked away, she pressed the final key. The core flickered, the ship trembled, and then a massive explosion rang out, louder than any sound Ethan had ever heard. The ship shook as though it was breaking apart. And then darkness. Ethan awoke to silence. The overwhelming roar of explosions, the tremor of the ship breaking apart, had faded. All that remained was a quiet stillness. His body ached, every inch of him screaming in protest, but he pushed through the pain. He had to know if they had succeeded. He slowly lifted himself off the cold, metallic floor, his eyes blurry but focused. Zelera was beside him, struggling to her feet, her expression hard and unyielding. "Zelera," Ethan rasped, his voice hoarse. "I'm fine," she answered, her voice strained but steady. Her eyes flickered to the countdown clock. The numbers had stopped. 0. The room around them was eerily calm. The core, once a violent, glowing sphere of energy, had gone dark. The hum of the ship's systems had been silenced. They had done it. They had stopped the Graxian weapon. Ethan took a breath, exhaling with a heavy sense of relief. But the war was not over yet. He could feel it in the pit of his stomach. They had stopped the immediate threat, but the Graxian fleet was still out there. The Graxians had already been on the offensive, and they would not stop so easily. "What now?" Zelera asked, looking to him for guidance. Her voice, though steady, carried the weight of a question neither of them could answer yet. Ethan's eyes hardened. "Now we finish what we started." The war's turning point. The flagship had been disabled, its core destroyed. The Graxian fleet was still reeling, its coordination thrown into chaos, but Earth was far from safe. The fleets surrounding the planet were large, and the battle was far from over. Zelera's quick thinking had saved them, but there was still one last push needed, a final strike that could turn the tide. Ethan keyed into the communication system, his voice steady despite the chaos in his mind. "General Lopez, this is Captain Ward. The core is destroyed. We've neutralized the Graxian flagship, but we still have work to do. We need your forces to hit them now while they're disorganized." Lopez's voice crackled through the comms, laced with both relief and determination. "Understood, Captain. We've already mobilized our forces. We'll hit them with everything we've got. But you'll need to hold the line. We're sending reinforcements your way." "Hold the line," Ethan repeated to himself. That was what this had always come down to. Humanity wasn't going to surrender to the Graxians. Not now, not ever. Zelera turned to him, her eyes searching his face for something. "Are you ready for this?" He met her gaze. "Are you?" For a moment, the weight of their situation hung heavy in the air, the enormity of the battle before them. But then, Zelera's lips curled into a small, almost imperceptible smile. "Always. The last stand." The ship lurched, throwing them both off balance as the first wave of Graxian reinforcements arrived. Despite the damage to their flagship, the Graxians had regrouped quickly, and their fleets began moving to cut off any escape routes. Ethan and Zelera rushed to the hangar bay, where a handful of Earth's best pilots had managed to reconfigure some old fighter crafts. They were Earth's last hope for turning the tide of the war. The Graxians had underestimated humanity's resourcefulness, and now they would see it firsthand. Ethan glanced at the fighter pilots around him. Many were fresh-faced, others seasoned veterans. All of them had the same look in their eyes, determination, a burning desire to protect their home. One pilot, a young woman named Kara, approached him, her face a mix of nerves and resolve. "Captain, we've got our wings ready. If you're flying with us, we'll need your command." Ethan gave her a nod, settling into the pilot's seat of one of the fighter crafts. His hands tightened on the controls as he felt the weight of his responsibility. This was it, humanity's final stand. As they shot through the hangar bay doors, the vast expanse of space opened before them. The Graxian fleet loomed large, their warships still in formation, unaware of the trap that was about to be sprung. Ethan's fighter soared into the chaos, weaving through fire and debris as he led the charge. Behind him, the Earth pilots followed suit, striking down Graxian fighters and creating an opening for the reinforcements to arrive. Zalara's voice came through his comms, calm and focused. "Target their engines, Captain. If we disable their fleet, they'll lose their command. We can stop them from regrouping." Ethan set his sights on a large Graxian destroyer, locking onto its main engine. The blast rang out as his fighter fired a direct hit. The Graxian ship began to falter, its engines sputtering before exploding in a burst of light. One down, but many more to go. As the battle raged on, Ethan's team pushed forward, gaining ground with every strike. The Graxians were beginning to lose their grip, and it was all thanks to humanity's adaptability, their ability to learn on the fly, to improvise in ways their enemies couldn't. Victory at last. Hours later, the tide had completely turned. The Graxian fleet was in disarray, many of their ships disabled or retreating. General Lopez's forces had successfully coordinated with Earth's reinforcements, launching a final offensive that shattered the Graxians' command structure. As the last Graxian ships fled, the Earth fleet gathered in victory formation, their one ragtag force now united in purpose. Ethan stood on the bridge of the command center, his gaze fixed on the view of the planet below. Earth had been saved, but it had come at a cost. There were lives lost, and the scars of war would remain. Yet humanity had stood firm in the face of annihilation and emerged victorious. Zalara joined him, her eyes scanning the horizon. "We've done it," she said, her voice steady despite the exhaustion in her tone. Ethan looked at her and then at the planet below. "No, Zalara, we've done it. Earth's future is ours to build together." A new beginning. In the aftermath of the battle, Earth was officially recognized by the Galactic Council as a member, not as a fledgling species seeking approval, but as a true power in its own right. The Graxian Empire had been forced to reckon with humanity's resilience, ingenuity, and courage. As the Council debated Earth's place among the stars, Ethan and Zalara stood side by side, knowing that the path ahead would not be easy. But Earth had proven itself, and now, humanity had the opportunity to shape its own future in a galaxy that had once turned its back on them. The stars, vast and infinite, stretched out before them, not as a realm of the unknown, but as a space for humanity to explore, to conquer, and to thrive. As Ethan looked at the galaxy around him, he finally understood what Dracus had meant when he said humanity was an anomaly, because Earth had proven that anomalies were often the most dangerous force in the universe. And now Earth had awakened,